A week of controversy when Florida's plan for parks became public. The pushback has been pointed and passionate.
This is an egregious overreach of state government, a plan that sought no local input whatsoever.
Today we stand united not just as residents, but as stewards of the very essence of Florida.
The mayor of St. Augustine Beach joins us, one of the most vocal local leaders opposed to development in state parks like Anastasia. And getting to the bottom of what happened in Pennsylvania, the Congressional Task Force taking on the assassination attempt of former President Trump. Florida's Michael Waltz explains what he's looking for on This Week in Jacksonville. Glad you're with us today. So a plan to put hotels, pickleball courts, other development into 9 state parks across Florida appears to be dead in the water, at least for now. This after public outcry by residents, community leaders, and lawmakers following the announcement by Florida's Department of Environmental Protection. Locally, those plans had included a 350-room lodge at Anastasia State Park. I spoke this week with St. Augustine Beach Mayor Dylan Rumrell. Your initial reaction to this plan that we learned about a week or so ago with the parks and developing there. What did you first think about that?
First of all, we were blindsided. I was blindsided, and everybody I talked to in the local community were all blindsided. Local officials, I called Representative Stevenson, Senator Hudson. I'm like, hey, what's going on?
Is it real?
Is it real? And it was real. I thought maybe it was a mailer that came out, it happened the same night as the election. So I was like, oh God, something came out a little late in the mail. But no, it was real, and it was unfortunate.
So 9 different state parks kind of on this plan that we saw from Department of Environmental Protection. Here we are after you guys held a news conference and after the governor was asked about it. The governor's saying, wait a second, back to the drawing board, I think is some of the word he used. What's your take on this? Did the governor's name was on the initial stuff that we saw coming out from Department of Environmental Protection?
It's interesting. First of all, I'm thankful that he came out and said what he said today. But importantly, I tell people all the time, it's conservation over politics. This isn't a political issue. This isn't Democrat versus Republican versus Independent. This is what's right. And we stood up for what was right. And I will stand by it every day. I may agree on 99% of things with the governor, except this one issue. And I'm okay with that. We have a right to have a difference of opinion. And my constituents, they're calling me. My local people are calling me. And look, I'm a local representative. I'm home rule. I got to take care of my people.
Well, first thing I heard you say at the news conference that you held this week was, this is personal to me. Feel personal to you?
It did. My family's born and raised here. I'm a generational Floridian. My kids are born in St. Augustine. And it is personal, right? I've gone to that park my whole life. My kids have gone to that park. We've kayaked, we've fished, we've gone through to the beach, and it's personal, right? I'm a capitalist at heart. I want people to make as much as they possibly can. However, there's a place and a time to do it correctly.
This probably won't surprise you, but so we've been asking our viewers, hey, we want to hear from you. And the overwhelming majority, no, don't develop at our state parks. There was at least one person who wrote in and said, hey, we've seen this work in other states. Some states, they can put in something that makes camping easier or has a park within the park to draw more visitors. Does any of that sit with you? Are there things that we need to do to develop within the state park to draw more guests?
I think a lot of people come to our state parks in Florida for the passive side of it, right? It's old Florida. You walk around Anastasia State Park, you have gopher tortoises, you have all these different animals that are running free. You have the Anastasia dune mouse, which is the only dune mouse in all of America, only found in Anastasia Island. And so I think people come for that. They come for just the peace and quiet, that old Florida feel. And I don't think we should do anything. Look, if you want to do something, business one-on-one is to raise, if you want to raise revenue, they're $30 a night. Change it maybe $60 a night. Let these campers that are there and just raise revenue. People come to the parks. It's 18 months out to get a spot for your camper. 18 months out. You can't get reservations. There's enough people going to the parks.
And Mayor, you're answering some of this, but we saw the Florida Department of Environmental Protection. They revealed plans to develop a 350-room lodge, disc golf course, pickleball courts, more of this kind of stuff. Is there room for that a little bit, or is there just no room for it at a state park like Anastasia?
I like the passive side of parks, right? I've said that. I like the passive side of it. But I'm okay maybe if they want to put a couple cabins. Princess Place Park, State Park has a couple cabins you can stay in. That's low impact. 350-room hotel would be the second largest hotel in St. Johns County. The Embassy Suites right next to it's just a little over 200. World Golf Village is just a little over 300. We haven't even talked about the parking surface. What is that going to look like? The infrastructure. So I'm just very thankful. We had great leaders like Rory Diamond step up. We had other folks, the Beaches mayor step up from Jacksonville, County Commission, Isla Mirada mayor came up. I'm just so very thankful that the governor did what he did, that we did what we did, and now we're back to square one.
I know you're a leader at the municipal level, the local level there in St. Augustine Beach. How do you think that happened from a state level? The governor said, oh, this was leaked. He didn't really have a desire to have that happen. But how do you think that came from this Florida state agency suddenly sprung on you and the other people across the state who said, no, we can't do this?
It's $1 million question. You know, we'll never know that answer. I don't know if I ever care to know that answer. All I know is that we fought. It was Floridians fighting for Florida. And right now we came to a compromise. Things are done. They may revisit it and, you know, keep vigilant. And I think people, again, it's conservatism, conservation over politics.
It sounds like you and a lot of other folks were stunned to see this coming down from the state without a conversation first.
Well, and that's the thing, is that maybe next time just, hey, come to us and say, hey, local officials, what's the temperature? Because we don't want to embarrass anybody. As elected officials, we don't want to be embarrassed, and we clearly don't want to embarrass anybody else.
Governor DeSantis referred to the plan as a leak, but the Department of Environmental Protection released the plan on its own website August 19th and posted maps detailing the plan the following day. The governor responded to questions about the plan this week, and he tried to create a lot of distance.
So this was something that was leaked. It was not approved by me. I never saw that. It is, they're going back to the drawing board, talk to your local communities. Here's the thing. I'd rather not spend any money on this, right? I mean, if people don't want improvements, then don't do it. And so that'll be something that citizens can be able to do. They're not doing anything this year. They're going to go back and basically listen to folks. A lot of that stuff was just half-baked, and it was not ready for prime time when it was intentionally leaked out to a left-wing group to try to create a narrative.
So local, state leaders, they quickly pushed back on the parks development plan, and so did national leaders. I asked Congressman Michael Waltz for his reaction. This is what he told me prior to the governor saying that the plans were going back to the drawing board.
Yeah, I have some serious concerns. I mean, we have Anastasia State Park. It's one of the most beautiful places in the entire, I have to say, the entire country. One of the longest stretches of unspoiled, original kind of Florida dunes and beaches that many of us remember from our childhood. I have real concerns that this has really been thought through, and I'm hearing it loud and clear from our mayors, our city council, our county commissioners. They are certainly opposed. I think that the State Department of Environmental Policy has a lot of explaining to do. It is a state issue, not a federal one, but I'm a proud Floridian too, and I don't want to see our state parks become overdeveloped.
Representative Waltz is part of the congressional task force investigating the attempt on former President Trump's life at that outdoor rally in Pennsylvania in July. My conversation with him on the Secret Service next on This Week in Jacksonville.
You're watching This Week in Jacksonville with Kent Justice.
The FBI shared new information this week about the gunman in the assassination attempt of former President Donald Trump. FBI officials confirmed Thomas Matthew Crooks searched online for events of both Trump and President Joe Biden. Officials are saying that Crooks saw the July Pennsylvania campaign rally as a target of opportunity. Congress formed a task force to look at what happened and how Crook had such an opportunity to attack. Michael Waltz is a member of that task force.
Well, Kent, I see this as kind of three major areas. Number one, I know from agents who have reached out to me personally that President Trump's core protective detail, the one that's with him all the time, has been requesting more resources from Secret Service headquarters and from the Department of Homeland Security for years now and been denied. And the reason apparently was that the Secret Service headquarters only budgets once you become a former president for a much smaller detail than when you're a current, but they don't make the distinction whether you're Jimmy Carter or W. Bush painting in his barn or someone who's pretty unprecedented like President Trump, who's still a candidate, has multiple residences, doing these big rallies, and importantly, has foreign threats in addition to the domestic ones from Iran. So that's an issue. Obviously, what happened that day and the security plan that had huge failures in it is issue number two. And then I think there's a broader set of issues: training, recruitment. Does the Secret Service have the budget and the resources it needs to protect our people and our senior officials? And so that's what we're looking to get to the bottom of. I still have a heck of a lot of questions of the FBI and the Secret Service that I think, Kent, they're moving too slowly in this investigation.
So, bipartisan task force here, Congressman Moskowitz from down in South Florida, kind of a counterpart to you. He pushed back on some statements that you had made. You are saying, as I understand it, hey, you're concerned about whether or not this really was a lone wolf shooter who attacked the president there. And Congressman Moskowitz saying, we don't know that, or it's grandstanding, or whatever. Bipartisan nature of this task force. Are you guys going to be able to work together and really come to some conclusions that we can all say, yeah, that's what happened?
Yeah, well, we certainly should be able to. My issue has been up till now, both the FBI and the Secret Service are saying we don't know motive. There's very little social media presence, which I find it in itself very odd for a 19-year-old. And that we really just don't know much about his background. How did he get trained to make 3 IEDs? How did he have a remote detonator? Why does he have 3 encrypted accounts in 3 different foreign countries that they still haven't been able to get into? But yet the FBI is very quick to say he acted alone. I mean, that's what I'm questioning. How in the same breath they could say we don't know much, but yet we know he acted alone. And when you overlay that with foreign plots, the Iranians literally are plotting and planning to kill President Trump. A Pakistani national with ties to Iran was after putting a down payment on hitmen to kill President Trump. So I just think, I just question how they've come to that conclusion so quickly. It may be the right one, but I wonder why.
You know, broadly speaking, I think most Americans say, boy, Secret Service agents, they are going to step in the path of an attack. They are going to put themselves between the president, the protectee, and whatever harm might fall to them. But obviously, a lot of Americans right now are saying, boy, the Secret Service failed here. What kind of changes do you want to see happen there? And you talked about budget a moment ago. Is it just budgeting and recruitment and those sorts of things? What kind of changes can make a difference in the future?
Well, I want to be very clear. The Secret Service agents on President Trump's detail, and I know some of them personally, did in the way of bullets. It wasn't just that first. There were 7 more fired, and which killed an individual and wounded another. And they completely body the president and got in harm's way like they're trained. This was a failure of planning. And I do believe this was a failure of resources and perhaps even priorities. Another thing that we know is of the local field office that provides additional supplemental agents to a big event like a rally. They sent 12 additional agents to President Biden's wife, Dr. Jill Biden's event, which was indoors, but only 3 additional agents to a huge outdoor rally with a much higher threat profile against President Trump. Why was that? And what happened there, that makes the Secret Service more reliant on local law enforcement, who we all love, but aren't trained to the same level as Secret Service when it comes to protective details. So there's a lot of questions. This is about headquarters and planning and resources from what I've seen so far, not about the valor of the individual agent.
The director of the Secret Service there has already stepped down and taken some accountability. Is there more accountability that needs to be taken in the failures of planning, et cetera, that you just described?
Oh, I think so. Who approved the security plan that day for Butler, Pennsylvania, that left the building uncovered, that made the Secret Service very reliant on local law enforcement that doesn't have the same tactics, training, communications gear, and otherwise? Who approved 12 agents to Dr. Jill Biden, but only 3 to President Trump when it came to supplementing the core details? So there were a lot of fingerprints on this planning failure in between the director who's resigned and the agents on the ground. That's who we will be subpoenaing for the task force. And I believe there's more accountability to come.
So it's a bipartisan task force there with other House members from Florida. That includes Laurel Lee and Democrat Jared Moskowitz. All right, so there are a lot of ways to watch this election unfold in the coming 2 months. Is there something we can learn from history and the leadership of past presidents? That's a topic our next guest is an expert on. Stay with us on This Week in Jacksonville.
You're watching This Week in Jacksonville on Channel 4.
The general election and the culmination of Vote 2024, it's fewer than 70 days away. What are you looking for when it comes to leadership from your presidential candidate? That's part of our focus in this final segment today. Joining us remotely, author Talmadge Boston. One of the things I love about Mr. Boston is that he writes about baseball. We're going to focus, however, on presidential history if we start here. Tell us a little bit about the book that you've got here that's called How the Best Did It, and then how we might be able to view the current presidential candidates in light of that.
My book is How the Best Did It, Leadership Lessons from Our Top Presidents. It came out in April of this year. My 8 top presidents, George Washington, Jefferson, Lincoln, both Roosevelts, Eisenhower, Kennedy, and Reagan. The target audience is anybody who is or aspires to be a leader in any organization. These leadership traits that these 8 presidents demonstrated, each chapter devoted to a president, an average of 3 traits per president, a total of 24 traits for the book, can be applied by any leader in any organization. And the book explains how they use their specific traits to have success. At the end of each chapter, I have a series of questions for the reader to ask him or herself, how am I doing in using these leadership traits in my organization? Yeah. But obviously no American history is studied more than presidential history, and that's why the lives and lessons from our top presidents are so important.
And Talmadge, one of the things that stands, I've read individual books, Reagan on leadership, Lincoln on leadership, and so your title and what you're working on caught my attention there. What do you think we can learn from these presidents that you focused on and apply to how we're, as voters, going to choose who our next president is going to be when we have that vote in November?
Well, we have a real challenge on our hands because Donald Trump and Kamala Harris thus far have not demonstrated major leadership traits. The most important leadership traits are obviously integrity, the ability to build consensus, the ability to persuade effectively, not just to your base, but across the board to the country. These are the traits that our greatest presidents had that thus far in 2024, the nominees have not demonstrated that they have. They're obviously very good when they talk to their bases. They're all targeting what's now about a 10% undecided independent group that will determine the outcome of the election in the swing states. Obviously, Kamala Harris has a real surge going after the Democratic convention. Tonight, she has this very important interview with Dana Bash on CNN, her first real interview since she became the presumptive nominee. And interestingly, she chose not to do it by herself, but has brought in her running mate, Tim Walz. The Wall Street Journal today says, what is that about? Is he a crutch? Is she afraid to be interviewed by herself? Yes, we've had prior president, vice presidential candidates who've been interviewed, but only in the context of where the presidential candidate had had several interviews by himself previously. And we don't have that.
Right. It's all kind of a new opportunity, really, for this new candidate in the race. Let me ask about this. Debates coming up. I love debates. We know the last debate between Mr. Trump and Mr. Biden was very consequential in what we're seeing right now. What do you think this next debate can show us, because it's going to be Vice President Harris and former President Trump?
It's going to show us about the two candidates as far as Harris is concerned. Can she go deep and explain her policies, explain her changes of positions on major policies, explain the Biden-Harris presidency, which in many respects is not particularly great in the areas of border security, inflation, foreign policy, the Afghanistan withdrawal, the lack of clarity about their priorities in the Israel-Gaza war. What's her position on changes in the Supreme Court? Why has she changed her mind from wanting a ban on fracking to where she's not wanting a border wall, and now she does? There's all kinds of things she needs to explain, and hopefully Dana Bash, both tonight and in the debate, she'll be able to explain that in a way that makes people believe that she really can be the commander-in-chief and the president. As far as Donald Trump goes, is he going to back off all of the name-calling, all of the pettiness, all of the claims that the election was stolen, and actually target the areas in which the Biden-Harris presidency is so vulnerable with specific statements about these issues that he should be able to win on? But if he isn't focusing on them, he's going to go nowhere and continue to sink in the polls. So this debate on September 10th is going to be incredibly important.
It really will be. I appreciate getting some of your insight there. I'm looking forward to reading more of your books, including those ones on baseball. Talmadge, Boston, thanks for your time today.
My pleasure. Thanks, Kent.
All right, and I'm Kent Justice. Thanks for watching on air on Channel 4 and the CW17. And online, you always find us at news4jax.com and streaming on News4Jax Plus. Next time, Jacksonville Mayor Donna Deegan is joining us. And check out our weekly podcast, This Week in Jacksonville Business Edition. This week's episode looks at Black Business Month and the tools and opportunities available right now, and also the biggest challenge. You can find new episodes every Thursday at 9 a.m., and you'll find it right now on News4Jax Plus under the channel This Week in Jacksonville. It's also available wherever you find your podcasts.
See why every day more people are choosing News4Jax, Northeast Florida and South Georgia's #1 source for local news.